a chair tonight that I'm seriously excited about.
Oh, absolutely. Our guest has been in the trenches of horror and sci-fi for over 3 decades. Writing it, editing it, putting it on the screen, you name it, he's done it.
He's the Bram Stoker Award nominated editor behind Hell Comes to Hollywood, the creator of 18 Wheels of Horror, and the screenwriter of sci-fi's cult favorite, Ice Spiders, among others.
But what I love is that he's never just camped out in one lane. Eric's stories hit that perfect balance. Genre lovers eat them up, but they've got that wider appeal that makes them great for sharing with friends.
Exactly. He's been shaping horror from the inside out for years, and he's still got that fan's energy, always excited, always thoughtful, and always ready to talk shop.
And he's not talking into the void either. He's connected with over 5,000 fans of horror and sci-fi who follow his work, which tells you just how much people value what he brings to the table.
So grab your drink, because we're about to welcome Eric Miller to the show. Eric, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
That makes me sound way more fancy than I actually am.
Well, let's kick this off. I sent you the first question ahead of time that got leaked somehow. What got you into writing? How did you kind of discover your knack for writing, your love of writing, and how did it get you into movies?
Probably like many people, just grew up. My dad was a big reader, and there were always books in the house, and he was a college professor, so there were all of that around, and everyone I hung out with. But probably just watching movies and TV, like we all did. For some reason, I still remember, not vaguely, I specifically remember riding in a car. I don't know how old I was, looking at the blur of signs along the side of the road as a really tiny kid, not knowing what they were. And suddenly, from one moment to the next, I could read something. And I'm sure it was something as stupid as McDonald's or something, because we were going to go get a cheeseburger. But I literally remember the revelation of that. So from the time I could read, I just started reading everything way above my level, probably some things I shouldn't have been reading. And somewhere in there, don't know why, you just, like I think so many people do, you just start kind of writing things down and aping those stories that you read, and that led me into so many different directions. A couple great teachers, some librarians, and late night horror movies and kung fu movies, and like probably the biggest influence of whatever Godzilla movies. Love the shirt there, by the way, Tim. That just that weird mix of horror and not knowing the social implications of Godzilla because you're just a kid, and then the raft of all the great pretty much wrestling movies in between. But all of that just kind of came together over the years, and I just started writing. Eventually, went to various schools, various colleges, and was trying to do journalism and wanted to write for magazines, and I was always writing things on the side. And eventually, one day, I think I saw RoboCop in the theater, and that was a one big light bulb moment that said, hey, get in the car, go to Hollywood. Way back in the day when people didn't just jump in the car and go to Hollywood. It was a much more closed, smaller environment then. But, thanks to intern advisor and some, I think, people who wanted free labor at a movie studio, I wound up in Hollywood as an intern in development. So, and then discovered screenplays. And through that, that's, a whole life would take 10 podcasts to go over, which I'm happy to do. I can talk till midnight, but led to being on set, writing scripts, just so many friends and opportunities and things that just because I just got in the car and followed the green signs west when everybody said, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to Hollywood. And here we are.
Yeah. So
Nice.
What was it like to see your first story on the screen?
It's a total thrill. My first one was co-written, but developed with a previous co-writer, Justin Stanley, The Shadow Men. And I think so far none of my films have had the big giant theatrical release. Which there might not even be those much in the future. So I better hurry up and get one before theaters go away. But I hope not. Going to the screening and just seeing that cast and crew, whatever it was, and the limited releases, it was just a thrill because you see those words that you wrote and somehow, and we got to be on the set a little bit too. And just seeing how it's interpreted, but like, hey, I wrote that line, I came up with that. It's kind of an indescribable thrill. So it's a lot of fun.
Anyone have questions? Want to hop in? Go for it.
So I know you've edited some story collections, but I actually was able to read your standalone book, Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed, and I found that really interesting because it mixed a lot of different elements, and I'm like dying to know your inspiration behind it. Because just to give everyone a little bit of background, you've got like fantasy elements, you've got horror elements, you've even got sports elements because basketball plays like a big role in the story, but you also have a lot of emotional development. I felt like in the book, especially when it came to the characters, there was definitely like an underlying emotional aspect to it. So I'd love to hear about how that came into play and what inspired you to put all
Yeah,
those
well,
elements together.
yeah. Thanks for reading, and the emotional elements are there, and that's the core of the story. And even though I usually say I don't want to give too much away and spoil anything, like you said, there's different elements. There's fantasy, horror, mystery, a romance, which I know a lot of my friends are out there laughing that I wrote something regarding romance, but it's just kind of me. I like horror comedies. I like horror fantasies. I read voraciously. I like kung fu movies. I like science fiction movies and books and TV. I read widely and I watch widely. I'm not a some people are snobs that literary people don't read horror, or horror people won't read literary, and I've never been that way. If it's a good story, it's a good story. I'm reading Dickens at the same time I'm reading Poe when I'm a kid, and I can happily flip from an art film over to Godzilla and giggle while giant rubber monsters are destroying Tokyo. So I've always liked that, and my favorite writers have been that. I have to give huge credit to grew up in and around Indiana mostly. That's my state home, even though I've been in Hollywood for decades. But
Hey,
Kurt Vonnegut from Indiana, and he was an early read, and I think they shove it down your throat a little bit because he's the home state guy, but he was such a terrific, amazing, world-altering writer, and you read things like The Sirens of Titan, and he always mixed science fiction with sarcasm and humor and very literary stuff, and so that was a huge influence on me coming in. And this story itself, I took the writer's adage of, if any of you have heard this, to write something, finish it, put it in the drawer, come back to it later, disassociate from it. I spent far longer than I want to admit staying away from this story, but it always called to me and came back. So there's elements, some people have read it in some of my hometowns. I have various places I live, but there's elements of people that I know. There's elements of me and the hero. There's a couple of basketball heroes, sports people that I've known. I won't say that it's directly taken from one of my bosses, but there's a boss in there that was a lot like one of my bosses, the good one, not the bad one. But so there's so many. I think it's why it comes off so real, and that emotional core comes through in spite of shooting demons in the face and all this weird magical stuff and things going on. There's so much of me in there, my family, the good parts of my mom, the good parts of lessons I learned from my dad, friends, and just little bits. And I could go on forever and go through and have a little Easter egg pop-up thing of just like, oh, this came from there and that came from there. And all writers do that. We all take little bits of ourselves and put them in. And in this one is probably more personal than most of the things I've written. Even though, I can't dunk a basketball or anything, the heroes very much got very much elements of me, and that Midwestern drive to work and finish a job and take care of your family and ignore outside. Take care of the family, keep it inside, and no matter what it costs you, just go do it. So, and again, I'm glad that emotional core comes through because I wanted it to be entertaining and fun. At the end of the day, there's sections I wrote them. I've read them over 100 times. There's a couple of sections still make me cry when I read them, and I hope readers get that too. But at the same time, just have a lot of fun because there's also just flat out stupid fun things in there too.
Yeah. Elise, you had a question?
I do. Hi, Eric. So, one of my favorite subgenres is the creature feature, and I absolutely love shark movies. So, Swamp Shark, I absolutely loved that movie. It was fun, and but what really impressed me was that you have so many characters in that movie, and they're all so different and still very likable. How do you get so many characters into a script and still make them interesting and to where you care about them? In fact, one of the characters I think you're supposed to not like, when he dies, I'm like, oh, I liked him.
You know what? There's people that do that 1,000 times better than me. Like, I'm in awe of, like, you read great Stephen King books and there's 50 or 60 characters, and somehow Joe Abercrombie, if you read him, I'm just blown away. And The Blade itself and others, how there's 60 or 70 characters and they go through 10 different books and there's callbacks to them. But so you just put that in, and you strive to do that. You have to watch it as a writer. You have to be careful. This has happened to me a lot too, but I see it in other people's works that sometimes you have the same character spread across two different people. They're saying the same lines and they serve the same story purpose or emotional purpose. So you have to kind of catch yourself or catch your friend to go back and go, oh wait, no, get rid of that person. But part of it is just characters are the most important thing. I usually get a story in mind first. But the characters are what makes it happen because we all want to identify with them, and some little bits of us and the comic relief or whoever we all think we're the hero, but most of the time we're really just the side character. But making that real, and again, just putting little bits of people that I know in each one of those, or people whether they're friends or not, or people I've worked for or with, I try to hang little bits of those things and the dialogue and the way people talk on that. And then when the actors come on, all credit to the actors, especially in a screenplay, is scripts are blueprints. And then it's taken out of your hands and 700 people tear it apart with chainsaws and hopefully put it back together in a better version than you imagined. So when the actors come on, if you're lucky enough to be around, and most of the time you are, you can, and on that particular movie I was around, you could take little bits of them, talk to them, and sometimes they want a lot of changes, but you have to be careful to not wreck the script and make the director mad. But you want to fine tune it to them because that's what they do for a living. They're making boring words on a page come to life, and that's a big thrill, as we were talking earlier about seeing your first movie. When you see a line delivered the way that you imagined it being delivered when you wrote it by an actor, it's like, oh wow, that was it. They got exactly what it was. But so all credit to them and the directors for taking those words and doing it. And again, hopefully you're there with them to make that. And which character were you mad that got killed? I'm curious.
Christy Swanson's boyfriend. I thought he was fun. He was being kind of heroic in this moment. He's like, I can do this, and I knew it was going to happen. And oh well.
Oh, here's you're talking about the one, again, no spoilers, but the one who gets a certain part of anatomy bitten. Is that who we're talking about? I'm just going to embarrass him forever. That's my good friend, Rich Tanny. I hope you're watching or listening, Rich. Before he was a phenomenal writer, director, or during it, he was an actor as well, and also really good at that. And I was connected with this project, and I thought he was right for one part, asked the director to give him a read, and they turned up giving him a bigger part. So he earned that completely, and we still laugh about that. He makes amazing films, and he's far more than getting anatomy choked by a shark down in the swamp. It's fun. It's fun rewatching it to know that it's also one of my best personal friends. So when he hoists the Academy Award someday, hopefully I'll be around and go, I got you.
That's the peen violence makes a return in this episode apparently as well. I love it.
Yeah, I've got a question about ice spiders, which is an absolute blast. Oh my god, giant killer spiders. A lot of fun.
At a ski resort. I loved it.
At a ski resort, right? All different kinds of spiders too. So my question for you is, how did you get involved with ice spiders? Did you have a script that just, lying around about giant spiders that attack? Or was it sort of a job where you hired to write the script? And how involved, because the movie's a lot of fun, so I imagine it was a lot of fun writing the script. And how involved were you with ice spiders?
I was actually very involved, and a lot of questions there. But my producer friend Jeff Shank, who I had worked with on crew, but also had tried to, for years, trying to shove my scripts to him, and I know he just threw them on the shelf and went, "Yeah, whatever, go do your job." And I still remember one day I got an agent and went into his office, and he's like, "Oh, I'd like to read one of your scripts," and I started laughing. "It's on the shelf, Jeff." So he always read and liked my stuff, and he was very helpful in me getting an option. Thanks, Jeff, you're out there, directly led me to getting the the writing job on Dog Soldiers 2, which has not seen the daylight yet. And even if it does, it might not be my script. But Jeff loved a werewolf script that I wrote. It helped me get it optioned, and then knew of somebody looking for a writer and hooked me up with that. So that's kind of how Hollywood works in that extreme networking way. But he called me, unlike the way I understand it, sci-fi goes from the channel would go from a title to a log line to a story and eventually do all these steps. And eventually Jeff called me. He said, I have a deal. The channel wants to do this. They already have a title. I don't know who came up with the ideas or the title. And I thought it should be called Snow Spiders because it seemed to make more sense and had alliteration. But they were obviously smarter than me. So it worked, and he called and said, hey, I want you to write this. And at first I was like, I don't know. And I don't know why I said no, because I love creature features. But thankfully, Jeff talked me into it, wrote it, and my first draft was ridiculously big and large. And when you said the different type of spiders, I did tons of spider research. And look, I don't like spiders. I don't run screaming, but I also hope somebody else throws them outside. Arachnophobia is an amazing film, and Big Ass Spider and others. I love them, but I think, like most people, it's in our DNA to just hate spiders. But doing the research
is a good one.
Yeah, tons of research on them though, and there's an amazing variety of spiders. And unfortunately, the budget didn't support putting all the different ones. Like there's a lasso spider that literally sits on a leaf and spins out a lasso with sticky on the end and waits for a bug to fly by and whips it out and gets his dinner. And like that's got to be in the movie, but unfortunately, it didn't make it. But some of the shapes did, and I think if I remember right, the Black Widow, because that's easier to do in effects and colored in, became kind of the main the final spider, as it were. But it was a lot of fun to write, and they did keep me around, and I kept making it fun. And again, the characters were great, and I kept trying to make them more fun and more funny. And at a certain point, the channel was like, "This is too funny. You need to trim that back a bit." But and one character that ended up being played by Stephen J. Cannell, that was my favorite character, the coach, Coach Frank, I think his name is. And I don't know why, I just loved that character. But him and Dash Dashel, the hero, just kind of the opposite sides of skiing and competition and sports and all this. I just really liked him, that he was a caring guy. And the casting directors were also friends of mine, and in this whole weird low budget movie world that I've worked in for years. Don and Dean Pemrick, they cast Stephen J. Cannell. And if people don't know who he is, you could not have a more literary and Hollywood titan than Stephen J. Cannell. Just produced, wrote, created so many iconic characters and TV shows, and also wrote books. And he was near the end of his career, but richer than anyone, and he just loved being on set. And he gets the call like, "Hey, I'm going to go play this part in a low budget sci-fi movie," and he just loved it. He flies his jet up to Utah and plays the part. So it's super cool that one of my heroes actually played a part that I wrote. Did I answer all that? Did I miss anything?
Fantastic. Yeah, I think you covered everything. One last sort of fun question: did you have nightmares about spiders while you were working on ice spiders?
Not
probably will.
No, actually, it was as you've seen. Yes, it's scary, and I have friends who can't watch it, but it's not like the difference between Arachnophobia and other movies like that. I mean, good Lord, what's that scene where they open the kitchen cabinet and Arachnophobia and the reaching in for the whatever? Oh, I can't take that. But it's more on a cartoon level. It's on a sci-fi level because it's broadcast. They want to scare people, but they can't also make their audience run screaming for the hills. So I think the effects worked for that, the writing, and I think the comedic overall tone of it, adventure comedy tone of it, helped with that too. So I didn't have a lot of them, but I've had a few run-ins that I want to run screaming.
Awesome. Well, Ice Spiders, it's so much fun. If you haven't seen it, check it out, and congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Actually, I have a question. What are you reading these days, Eric?
What am I reading? I am reading a book called Polybius, a new horror book, horror sci-fi. Colin Armstrong, also from Indiana, who I didn't know back then, but somehow back in the years I saw a short film that he made and I was blown away. And I'm pretty sure, if my memory works, I reached out to him years ago and we talked and chatted, and he took, we just fell apart. And then when I had the first the book signing for Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed at Dark Delicacies, one of the last signings there, he came in, and I hadn't seen him forever, and we reconnected, and he had just published his book, which I didn't even know he was writing. So I'm reading that, and I've also just picked up, I mentioned before, late in life, I've become the biggest Joe Abercrombie fan in the world, so I've just started The Devils. I was going to reread the entire 10 books of The First Law, if you all know what I'm talking about. If you don't, and you're into darkness and grim noir and fantasy and all that, or just great writing. Holy crap. Joe Abercrombie's amazing, but instead of rereading 10 more books, I just said, The Devil's a new one. Let's jump right in. So,
and one more question. Go ahead. Well, okay.
No, go ahead, brother.
Okay. Who are your favorite authors?
I got so many, as we all do. You have to put, in the horror world, I have to put Shirley Jackson and Stephen King at the top. They're amazing, and you always have to go back to Mary Shelley, and the Frankenstein started everything, but there's not a big catalog there. But people, very diverse. Roger Zelazny, not necessarily a household name like Ray Bradbury and his contemporaries, because there's not been the definitive TV show or movie made other than Damnation Alley 100 years ago. But Zelazny blew me away. His the first 5 Chronicles of Amber, I think I've reread. I discovered those in the 10th grade on a shelf in the library, and I think I've reread those books 50 times, all 5 books. So Poe is a big influence on me. Tim Powers. I'm lucky enough. There's in Los Angeles. There's a paperback book show every year, and a lot of writers come and sign things. And Tim is always there, and I just was a fan, and I'm always dragging my books up. And I've just loved him for years. And again, another person that. He got a lot of notice because the On Stranger Tides is based upon his. Pirates of the Caribbean is based on his book. On Stranger Tides.
Oh.
So he finally got some literary cred, but he's just an amazing writer, and he mixes fantasy and magic and these things, and incredible writer. So, and shout out to Douglas Adams, gigantic influence on me. There's so much imagination in The Hitchhiker's Guide and then the Dirk Gently books. I'm in awe. I mean, some friends of mine say, how do you come up with those ideas? And then I look at someone like a Douglas Adams, and there's more ideas on one page of Hitchhiker's Guide than I can come up with my entire life. And I love that process, and people like him. And again, so many more. I'm probably forgetting a ton, and probably very good friends. But sorry, guys. Yeah, just so many. Giant list.
GC, you had a question, and then we'll close it out with one more after you. So.
Yeah, no, it was a quick one. Because Eric, my ears perked up when you mentioned Polybius, and I know that's like this urban legend of this old video game that supposedly nobody could find and stuff. Is that the book that you're reading?
I literally just started it, so I don't know the story, but I'm assuming that's what it is. So okay. It's a sci-fi horror, and it literally just came out this year also by Colin Armstrong with two L's. So, and search, I'm sure it's on YouTube, his short film Red Harvest. I need to get a hold of him and say, why haven't we ever made that a full movie yet? Because I just remember being so impressed with what he did as a short filmmaker, and I'm really excited. I just literally started opening the book this morning to start reading it. So.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember hearing about it a while back, and I'm big into like those type of urban legends. So that's awesome that you're into stuff like that, man. I mean, I love that you mentioned that you don't put yourself in just one corner, one genre, because I think it's important that as a writer, filmmaker, when you embrace all these different genres, you're able to pick and choose a lot of the good things that come from each one of them, and you're able to create these masterpieces. You're able to keep things a lot more realistic and honed down compared to somebody that tries to make a horror movie, but they've done comedy their whole lives, and they don't really understand like the key elements that go into making something realistic, like a slasher film and stuff.
Yeah, well, that ends up happening in Hollywood a lot because, and I don't mean to make anybody mad, but there's a whole bunch of people in Hollywood, especially screenwriters, that they watch and read other movies. And I run into them all the time. You even run into executives that have never read, they haven't seen this or heard of that. And I don't claim to be, I don't have an English degree. I'm not going to write the great American novel by any stretch, but I've read Greek plays. I've studied theater. I've read, like I said before, I've read Dickens. I've read all these kind of things. And to me, doesn't everybody do that? And you look around and you see a lot of, not all screenwriters that are just, oh, did you read the last screenplay? And so there's this weird churn, especially in Hollywood, where things just start becoming so derivative. And I'm always fond of saying, I still remember seeing it, that the zombie genre was so stale. And Danny Boyle and his team came out of nowhere. That was not a horror guy at all, and made 28 Days Later and just blew the doors off of a genre and reignited it. I mean, zombies were always there, but they weren't. I don't think they were the industry that they are now. And thanks to Walking Dead and those teams too. But somebody comes from outside, Danny Boyle. Like who's this? He did Trainspotting, and then he makes arguably one of the greatest horror movies ever. That's just awesome, and that's being open to other people coming in. And he did it respectfully. He wasn't coming in to stomp on people and so I can do it better than you. But there's an absolute element of, I'm sure there was at one point on the set or in development where Danny Boyle went, hold my beer. Watch this.
All right. So to wrap up the interview portion with you, Eric, thank you so much for your time and being here. I know you had mentioned you're going to stay and hang out for a while, but don't know how long you can stay. So that's exciting. So last question for you. What do you have in the works? What's coming up for you? What's next?
Tooling on just promoting Whatever Happened to Uncle Ed, the novel, which is as anyone will tell you who's ever written a novel, and the screenplay. The hardest part is selling it and getting out there. So, just doing all that. And I think most writers are like me. We're not naturally, getting out there and jumping on the stage and saying, buy my book. But I think there's a great story there that a lot of people would enjoy if they read it. So I'm doing that. I'm also editing my second novel, which is a little more traditional, but still not quite as wild as Uncle Ed, but it's more of a traditional haunted house story. story involving ghost hunting and what happens when you might have actually gone into a real haunted house. What could be happening here? So, working on that, editing that. Hopefully, that'll be coming out. Have to finish it first and then do the rounds of submissions and all those fun things. But hopefully that'll be seen soon. And just always tooling on a couple of screenplays. I've got a short list of things that I want to work on and a couple of things I'm working with a few friends. There's a script that I was invited to help rewrite by a couple close friends that's going out right now. So fingers crossed for everyone that'll get picked up. And hopefully one of my originals will get picked up too.
Awesome. That is exciting. So thank you so much for this.